Okay, so thanks for coming, everybody, to, I guess it's my last lecture. Next week, Gail is teaching on the history of Hempology, and this will be the end of the fourth year. So today's lecture is on the marijuana medical access regulations and Health Canada. And so I'm going to, in a way, complement some of the past lectures and just give a real brief explanation of the history, and then want to focus primarily on what you might think of as the good, bad, and the ugly of Health Canada's current systems. Health Canada did not create the MMAR and start contracting a grower to provide cannabis as medicine out of the goodness of their heart. The Liberals did not think that medical cannabis was important to them. It was never on their platform. These regulations were forced upon them through court decisions, not just Terry Parker's, but in many ways the Terry Parker decision of July 31st, 2000 is seen as the most important and substantial, because it was a year after that that the MMAR were brought into effect. And we're very thankful for Alan Young for having not only cracked the Terry Parker case, but there have been a series of cases starting with, before that, the Wakeford decision with the person with AIDS. Terry Parker has epilepsy. And then with clubs such as the Hitzig decision, where the Toronto Compassion Club was actually raided after they were robbed, and a number of people filed a class action lawsuit, that Alan Young represented them, which struck the regulations down actually in 2003 as being inadequate, essentially. And then more recently, Alan Young helped out in the Slet-Coppolis decision, which again ruled that the regulations are inadequate. And I'll get to some of the reasons why later on. But back in 2000, when the government was told that they had to allow for the medical use of cannabis, there were a few important components in the court decision that led us toward what we have today. Health Canada did not start growing cannabis to provide to people that were getting what's called an application to possess. Health Canada contracted out to Prairie Plant Systems. Well, they got the contract eventually. It was supposedly put out as a tender, as they often like to do with government contracts. Having got the tender to grow for research purposes, it wasn't until the Hitzig decision that they were forced to sort of open that up so that people could actually buy their product from Health Canada. Ironically, before that, people were being told that you could possess cannabis and you get a card from Health Canada, but there was no legal place to buy a cannabis seed, bud, anything at all, aside from the pharmaceutical products that have, in essence, always been available. Well, not in essence, but for several decades at least. Sesamet here is the synthetic THC. It's called Marinol, or sold as that in the United States. But and I'll get to this later, but Sesamet or Marinol is one synthesized cannabinoid THC. It doesn't contain the rest of them, and each plant has 6 to 12. I've given some chemistry lessons before, so I won't get into it. But part of the reason that Terry Parker was successful was he argued that to control his epilepsy, he needed CBD, which is a separate cannabinoid, which was what controlled his spasms. And that's critical because it was based upon scientific evidence that the judge accepted that proved that the synthetic Marinol or Sesamet again was not sufficient, and that the whole plant needed to be available. And so while this Grow Up was formed for research by Health Canada. At least that's what they paid for it initially. I think the initial contract was $5 million or $7.5 million over 5 years, and they've had that renewed on a couple of occasions. They've cut out all the research essentially that they were doing. They were doing a couple studies on persons with AIDS and chronic pain. It's my understanding that they no longer fund those programs. Currently, the only research Health Canada is doing is on schizophrenia and mental health issues in cannabis. In essence, the Conservative government is really hoping to dig up some science that proves that cannabis causes deteriorating health problems, mental health problems. They're not doing any research on the medicinal aspects of it or any other potential harms. It's the only one that they're studying right now. The program itself allowed not only for possession but for growing. I shouldn't say that they didn't let you get it from anywhere. You could grow your own. Ironically, again, there was nowhere to get seeds or clones legally, which is partly why Mark Emery and was even directed as a seed dealer on Health Canada's own webpage, because they had no source of their own. In 2003, they were forced through HITSIG's decision to open up the vault, as you may say, and give people access to this at $150 an ounce. Yeah, you could purchase it. Apparently, the quality is so questionable that friends of mine who've brought it to show it to me have essentially convinced me not to even try it for my own health. I guess maybe I could have and should have, but I refused to do it based on what I've heard. Although I understand they're getting better, but they do irradiate it, essentially trying to kill all the molds and toxins, or not toxins, sorry, molds and bugs, as if there's bugs in it. What's the other one? I think mostly it's molds that they're trying to kill, or any other bacteria or anything else.
Can mold be prevented without having to radiate it?
There are ways to do that, but this is the way Health Canada standardizes all of its medicines. Apparently, it's weird though, because they've never had a plant actually get put through their drug. Oh geez. I should know the name of it by now. Drug control strategy program. Anyway.